Welcome to Breaking Financial Chains, where we combine practical money guidance with emotional healing to help you break free from financial limitations. I'm Tanya Ibberson, your financial wingwoman.
Hi there, and welcome to another episode of Breaking Financial Chains, the podcast. I'm so happy that you're here. This is my first episode back recording in 2026, and I'm so excited about some of the changes that I've made. And I would love your feedback. So if there's anything that really resonates with you today, leave a comment on the YouTube channel, put some feedback on the podcast, or reach out to me on socials. I would love to hear from you. So today's episode number 31, which again is quite impressive, is called Scarcity versus Abundant Mindset. So this is about transforming your money beliefs. Practically what you can do about it, perhaps why we have some of the beliefs that we have, and if you really want to shift from scarcity to abundance, what you can actually do about it. So the theme for this episode is around belief shifts, including a little bit of financial psychology in there, and also how you can undertake some of your own emotional rewiring whilst working through all of the stuff that we carry with us on a day-to-day basis. So what do we mean by scarcity and abundance mindset? So this is more than just buzzwords. They're everywhere online, but it's important that you understand what they mean to you. This isn't about fluffy manifesting or toxic positivity. Essentially, it's about what your nervous system believes is safe. And if we believe a certain thing, such as I don't have enough or I have plenty, then that totally and directly affects our behaviour. It affects the actions that we take. It affects our beliefs. So what we're really going to focus on today is how this plays out in relation to money. And if, as I've already said, if there's changes that you want to make, how we can do that. So what is scarcity mindset? Essentially, it's the fear of running out. It's the fear of not having enough. Even if you actually have enough, in inverted commas. And the word enough is really interesting when it comes to money, because let's put this as a question for you instead. Do you actually know what enough is? Do you know what enough looks like for you? Is that, if you think of the word money or enough, or what is enough money, is there a number that springs to mind? I think that's a really interesting question. And some of the work that I do with my coaching clients is having a number isn't really enough at all in some situations. Enough needs to give you something, but what is it that you're hoping to get from that enough? So being able to quantify the enough in the first instance is really useful. But if you have a habit, or if you have a tendency to avoid looking at things like this episode is precisely for you. Understanding why it's something you would rather avoid than deal with is the first step in awareness of them being able to change that behaviour. Scarcity mindset sometimes can link to the anxiety, the idea of spending money or investing money, which is interesting because sometimes investing, despite understanding it as a mechanism to provide for future you, it's still an act of spending. If you look at it in a certain way, it is still an act of money moving out of an account that you previously had access to for other things. So I have had instances working with clients where they see investing as spending, and if I'm investing money, then I have less for other things. So again, we're back to that scarcity piece. Sometimes a scarcity mindset can look like being obsessive about saving, just from a pure fear of actually running out, of something happening and then not being able to provide for a certain situation in the future, which can then lead to not enjoying the money that you have, not enjoying the fruits of all of the hours and hours that you put into employment or self-employment or running your business. If you're not then able to enjoy the rewards that come from that work, then that can be linked specifically to having a scarcity mindset. It can also look like a belief that success is limited, or that in some way your gain is someone else's loss, and therefore depending upon how you view that in terms of what you have, it must mean that the more you have, then the less someone else has. So there's a feeling perhaps of guilt around earning more, around having more. And also a scarcity mindset can look like always preparing for the worst. So assuming that the worst thing is going to happen, even when things are good. So you're constantly preparing for, well, what if the roof leaks? What if the car breaks down? What if the pipes burst? What if our boiler doesn't work? Or what if the car fails its MOT? Or on and on and on. And we can live our life constantly and consistently preparing for the worst. But again, it robs us of the joy that we can get from the present, from the here and now. And we can just constantly be looking for the next bad thing, which all then points towards how our nervous system is wired to deal with the everyday. You know, if we're constantly looking for things going wrong and preparing for things going wrong, it's almost as though we're working on the basis that that is what's going to happen, and we have no enjoyment at all. Whereas the opposite of what we're talking about in terms of what is an abundant mindset, in relation to money, it could be a belief that you can trust yourself to earn. Even if an unexpected bill comes in and you have to dip into your savings, or even if you have to spend more than you anticipated in a month, in a week, over a certain period of time, then that's okay, because we can earn more, we can put more hours in, and therefore we have, the more money is coming to us, we can create more. Whether that's in terms of services, whether that's in terms of things that we're wanting to sell, whether that's in terms of ideas, and we can therefore recover. So it's something that is continually renewable as a concept, as a commodity, which is what money is. Then having a belief that we can recover from any unexpected things to happen can give us a completely different mindset, and that links to an abundant mindset, rather than constantly assuming that things are going to all go wrong around you. An abundance mindset can look like making decisions based on your values and your vision, rather than the fear of something going wrong. We talk about values a lot. We've got several episodes where we talk about how we can look at what our values are. So if you're listening to this episode now and thinking, brilliant, I'm going to shortcut how I feel around money because I'm just going to figure out what I need to live an abundant lifestyle and have an abundant mindset. Well, you've skipped a few really important steps, because without understanding what your values are and what's important to you, you're constantly going to be looking for what somebody else has as part of their abundance mindset. This is a really important piece when it comes to understanding the importance of you and what makes you tick and what's important for your lifestyle and how you live your life and what makes you feel good about yourself. So abundance mindset, we're talking about it in terms of money, but an abundance mindset is abundance in all the things, in how we feel, in our energy levels, in the way that we live our lives. An abundance mindset looks like feeling safe, both with spending and saving. So having plans for both. And it being okay to have both and feel safe to have both. And ultimately understanding that money flows, as we've mentioned, as a commodity, but that your power is in how you move with it. Yes, unexpected things happen with money. Yes, there are things that get in our way. There are hurdles, there are roadblocks when it comes to what we might plan to do with our money, but we move with them. We change plans. We make contingencies. We sell more, we work more, perhaps in the short term if we have a little bit of a setback, but then we look to reevaluate. You know, maybe our initial plans weren't realistic and that's why we've hit a bit of a stumbling block. So having an awareness of the here and now and where things are and what's important to you now is a really, really key part to having that abundance mindset. Another really key part is understanding that it's not always just as easy as, well, if I think from a scarcity mindset, I'll just think from an abundance point of view and everything will be completely fine. Well, it isn't just about mindset, which is also something that we talk about quite frequently and I'm going to be talking about a lot more on the podcast. And that's that it's trauma. it's linked to past events. It's linked to the way that our brains are wired based on how we've learnt to respond to things that have been in the past, in particular our early childhood years. And childhood scarcity and lessons that we've learned around parents and caregivers and grandparents, that we can't afford that mentality or that lesson that we learned, or just the words that we heard and we absorb as a sponge. When we're young, particularly pre-7 years of age, our immature brains can't distinguish between a fact and an opinion, but it does remember the feelings and the tone and the results that happened after certain events. That panic around bills or an unexpected cost creates a really lasting core memory for a child, which can contribute hugely to a scarcity mindset. So recognizing that there are things in your past that have been hardwired literally into the way that your brain is made up will be impacting the decisions that you make now, because we're responding to a feeling. We're triggered to something that happened that we maybe don't even have a conscious memory of, but that still affects our behaviour and our actions today, many decades later in some instances. Past financial shocks and instability, such as a parent being made redundant, such as a divorce and then the separating and splitting of two households. Past financial shocks of our own, if you're in your 40s and 50s and things are going really well, that's not to say that you're not going to be impacted and making decisions based on something that perhaps happened in your 20s or 30s, or you viewed happening whilst you were employed in a different situation. All of those things contribute to our makeup. It's like if you imagine a Russian doll setup, all of those different earlier versions of you are still within you, and therefore they impact the things that you do today. They impact the way that you feel and the thoughts that you have, and potentially the actions that you take if we don't work to do something slightly different. Past money control or abuse can also have a huge impact on our mindset based on linked to past trauma. That could be from a partner, it could be a partner in life, it could be a business partner, it could be a parent, it could be a child, depending upon where you are in your life, that the learning that somebody has taken advantage of you, and that actually is control and abuse, if that's not what was recognised at the time, can have a huge impact on the decisions and the way that you feel around money right now. Essentially, your brain learned to stay in survival mode, and it's trying to protect you now, so it's going to direct you to make certain decisions or point you in a certain direction, because it's learnt that it wasn't safe to go a different way, and therefore the only way to keep safe is to do things the safe way, whatever that looks like. And that's then how scarcity shows up in the everyday. It shows up in the decisions that we make. It shows up in staying in underpaying roles, because at least that's stable, right? Because employment is more safe than self-employment. Or is it? It's an interesting concept in itself. Is it actually safer to remain in employment, even if it means earning less, than branching out on your own, for example? Scarcity can show up as avoiding investment, whether that's in yourself, investment in your business, investment in being able to rest because it's the weekend. Investment is being able to rest because you've been burning the midnight oil to get through a project or to hit a deadline. Feeling constant anxiety around money, regardless of your income, all contributes to a scarcity mindset. And essentially feeling guilty for wanting more time off, wanting more money to make better choices, to have more choices for your family, to leave a situation, for example, if you're in a financially controlling relationship, or a situation like where you're staying in an employment because you feel you're not going to find anything better elsewhere. All of this is how scarcity shows up in the everyday. So the purpose of wanting to talk about this today is quite often this scarcity can show up without us even realising. we don't recognise necessarily that something is a scarcity mindset or that something is showing up in a certain way, because it becomes our normal. It becomes the way that we do things. It becomes the way that we react to a certain situation. And therefore, why would you even think to give it a name or a label? Because it just becomes part of you. So listening and hearing this, if this is resonating with you, one of the messages I want to get across is that things can change if you want them to. Things can evolve and be different. Might take a little bit of work though. And I'm not saying any heavy lifting, but it's about understanding to some extent the past that shapes who you are today and where you want to go. So this again links to understanding what your values are as a human being and understanding what's important to you, because it's not as easy as just picking up a textbook or listening to my podcast or reading a blog post and following what someone else tells you you should do. You get to choose what you want to do. You get to choose what's important to you and how you do it. But unless you're prepared to look at what that is, you're never ever going to be able to get off the starting block. So when it comes to potentially shifting towards an abundance mindset or embodying the feelings of abundance without the fluff, this is about real actions that you can take. We have to start with safety, not just spreadsheets and planning and budgeting. If the thought of opening Excel fills you with dread, well then that's probably not the safest thing to be doing right now for you, and it would just be another reason why you can't make that starting point. So we need to look at something else. We need to look at doing something differently. And sometimes that starts with naming the old belief, recognising those things that we tell ourselves, or remembering what we learnt or what we heard as a small person that then is impacting the decisions that we're making today. So, for example, if we have a belief that money is hard to keep hold of, or we have a belief that money flows through my fingers like water, then the first step to changing that is to rewrite that thought. Maybe write down the old belief and write down the opposite next to it. And we start to repeat a new phrase. So instead of money is hard to keep, we could write down, I'm building safety through systems, or I'm building safety through strategy. Because by taking it one step at a time and just starting to change our thoughts, instead of today, I am going to sit down, I am going to analyse the last 12 months' bank statements, I'm going to create a spreadsheet, and I'm going to categorise all of my spending, I'm going to look at exactly where it's all gone, and I'm going to change my savings patterns so that by the time I get to dinner time tonight, I'm going to have a clear plan of how things are going to be for the next 12 months. Well, that is a surefire way to send you spiralling into some procrastination, different side quests, or do you know what, I'm going to go and defrost the freezer instead because that feels like too big a task. This has to be something that we take at our own pace. Those memories and those core beliefs that we've built up didn't just happen overnight. They didn't just drop into our minds yesterday. These have been there potentially for years and years and decades. So we get to be kind to ourselves, and we get to be really gentle in recognising where they come from, not from a place of blame or shame or this is my fault, I've put myself where I am. This is just about awareness in the beginning. So naming the old belief and being able to rewrite that belief, maybe journal around it. I'm a huge fan of journaling, as we know if you've listened to any of my earlier episodes. And beyond changing that thought and journaling and rewriting that old belief, we can start to look at creating, not changing habits, but creating evidence to show our overcautious brain that is trying to keep us safe, micro evidence, if you like. We're going to create micro evidence to say, look, we can do this. It is safe to take a different path. And one of my favourite things to do with clients that say to me, money is hard to keep, money flows through my fingers like water, I can't save for toffee, or whatever those phrases might be, I want you to find yourself a jar, an old coffee jar, an old candle jar that's been burnt out, a glass from the kitchen, anything that is see-through. And I want you to put it somewhere that you're going to see it every day. And every time you look at it, I want you to put a coin in that jar or that glass or whatever that container is. It needs to be see-through because it makes it easier to see. But every time you look at it, you're going to put, even if it's just a 2p piece out of your copper jar, that I save coins out of my purse in a telephone box. It's like an old money box I've had since I was about 15. So I go and raid that, and we will put the money in the jar. So that every time I catch myself thinking, God, I can't keep hold of money, for God's sake, where is it all gone this month? I'm going to go and I'm going to take a coin and I'm going to put it in the jar. And I'm going to consciously say to myself, I can save money. I can keep hold of money. Because every time I say that, I'm putting a coin in that jar. And over time, each time you look at that jar, there is more money in there than you started with. And you're not taking any coins back out, because this is an exercise of creating micro evidence to show your brain you can do it. And this is just one example. But we want to look for different ways that we can show our brain that it's safe to hold on to money, and we can do it, because we absolutely can. And it's about tracking the small wins. So maybe you keep a spreadsheet, or if spreadsheets aren't your thing, you have a nice notepad, a piece of paper, a whiteboard in your office, in the kitchen, wherever that you want to keep it, where you keep a track of money that you've saved, money that you didn't spend, money that you did spend, because it's okay and it's safe to spend, money that you saved or invested, whatever it is, the opposite of what you're telling yourself you can't do. We're tracking the really small wins, not just the big ones. I mean, obviously the big ones are great. I've paid a credit card balance off today. Fantastic. Track that as well. But it's not about having to wait until we hit significant milestones. It's about I didn't spend on Amazon today, just as an example. And what we're wanting to try and do overall is let money serve your values, not your fear. So, for example, if one of your values is to have time with your family, then it could be that you save money to be able to take people in your family for a day out in the school holidays, or to be able to treat them to do something really nice at Christmas or at Easter or a significant event for you. Then that becomes something that you actively find ways to build up, rather than find ways to avoid or reasons why you can't do it. I think the values-based piece is so underrated, and it really can help to drive the behaviours that are important to us, because they're important to us. And that's something that no textbook is ever going to be able to say to you. So in order to reinforce these new behaviours and these new habits that we're going to start considering that we can do, we're going to look for some practical anchors to support this shift. And as with any change, it's often easier to not change. It's often easier to do what we've always done. But is it actually easier if it isn't getting us to a place where we want to be? Is it actually easier if it isn't helping us to think more abundant thoughts, if that's where we want to be? So I've already mentioned journaling. Daily journaling is a really useful anchor. It's a really safe anchor. It's a way of allowing your hands and your fingers to just write and see what comes out. Don't overthink, don't censor, pick up a pen and see what comes out. Where did I notice fear, or where did I notice trust today with money? And just see what comes out. Where have you had that interaction on a daily basis? Money mantras are great, again, because we're wanting to do some work to rewire that habit, those thoughts that we have going through our brain. So money mantras grounded in action, such as, I'm safe to check my bank balance today. I am safe to review my spending, or I am safe to check what my savings accounts are doing today, or I'm safe to check in with what my financial goals are. What are you saving for? If it's retirement, great. Do you know how much you need for retirement? If it's for a holiday or a new car, great. What car? How much is that car going to cost? What is the goal that you're saving for specifically? And we can put a number on it. Moving away specifically from the spreadsheets and the numbers and from a budgeting point of view, but looking at emotional budgeting. A plan for joy and peace, not just for bills. And what does that look like for you? Does that look like having a night away on your own, away from the constant need and demands and the tax on our emotional brain? What does that look like for you? Where can you find little pockets of that? Is that just, I'm going to get up 10 minutes earlier so I can enjoy a cup of tea in absolute peace when nobody is bothering me? And finding somatic tools, such as breath work, such as movement, real basic nervous system regulation before making money decisions. So if we're finding ourselves needing to make a decision on what money we're going to spend, or we've just had a letter through from the school and my daughter's been invited to go on a school trip and it's going to cost £400 to send her on this trip. Do I need to make that decision right now, this second? No, you absolutely don't. Does that notice if that fills you with panic? Notice if that fills you with, how on earth am I going to be able to afford this? And take yourself away from that situation. Breathe. Journal. Talk to a trusted person who can help you work through it if that's something that you're going to be really struggling with for yourself. Find something that works for you. Breath work is incredibly helpful when it comes to, particularly when it comes to regulating your vagus nerve. Making noises, physiological breathing. So breathing out for 2 breaths and then in for 1 really deep in breath can really help to reset the system when it comes to staving off any feeling of panic or any feeling of automatic response, whatever that looks like for you. Ultimately, this isn't about you need to flip a switch, because it's never going to be that easy. But it is about recognizing and understanding where you have things that are holding you back. It's really important that you take away from this that you're not wrong for having scarcity patterns. This is completely normal. This is something that it's a way that you've been shaped. Ultimately, you've been shaped this way based on memories and past experiences, but you also get to take control of what shape you look like going forward. Abundance isn't about blind optimism. It's not about manifesting a lottery win. It's about empowered choice. It's about understanding what options are available to you and knowing that you get to sit quietly in a way that suits you to be able to make those decisions how you want to. Ultimately, you deserve to feel calm with money, and it doesn't need to be governed or dictated by something that's happened in your past. And feeling calm with money starts on the inside, not just in your bank account. Thank you so much for listening. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.
Thank you for joining me today on Breaking Financial Chains. Remember, you have the power to transform your relationship with money one step at a time. If this episode helped you, please subscribe and leave a review to help others find their path to financial freedom. I'm Tanya, your financial wing woman, and I'll see you next week.